So my name is Bob Davy, and I bought it in 2019, and it was as a result of a relationship that I had with a company called Fast Aero out in Belgium, and we were using their P51 Mustang, and it just got a bit too pricey, and I was just in a fortunate place in my career at the time to get this aeroplane. But it was a project. When I bought it, it looked like a big airfix kit. It was in the corner of the hangar in bits. Wings were off and the tail was off, and we put it back together. It was supposed to take 2 weeks. It took 2 years and 2 months. I won't go about the budget. That was quite a lot more than we were planning. And we got it back to airworthy by about June 21.
By black, end of black, interfering, casting.
They wanted an air superiority fighter, and so they took the Yak-1 and they shrunk it, so it's got the same power as the early Yak, but it's 10% smaller. So the Yak-9, which looks very similar to it, for instance, has got a 33-foot wingspan. This has only got 30 feet. And to put that into context, a Piper Cub has got 176 square feet of wing, and this has only got 160. And it weighs 2.8 tons. Well, they're quite good with the light maintenance, because if you look along the side, you've got a seam just below the cockpit, and those panels, the first one and the third one are on a piano hinge, and they just lift up. They come off in less than a minute, and the one in the middle, the one with the nose art, well, it's nose art, it's side art, that comes off in about 2 minutes. So with less than 5 minutes, you've opened the whole aircraft up from the engine all the way to the tail, and the panels underneath are all on Zeus fasteners as well. So it's actually a really good airplane to work on. but it's only what it is. It's not a monocoque, so it's not a stress skin fuselage. The actual fuselage is a tube frame, like a Hurricane. So they're quite good at taking battle damage. That skin is just aerodynamic, it's not structural. But if the wing takes a big round, it will take the wing off, just like any aircraft. This wing is the wing the Allies wanted, but they didn't have the guts to build. It's an incredibly thin but incredibly strong wing. It was designed with one thing in mind: to produce a lot of lift, but not too much expense of drag. And whereas the Allies were building thick wings, I mean, the Hurricane's wing is something like that. I know the Spitfire wings are quite a bit thinner, but and in fact we have to keep a good eye on it, because the aircraft were only ever designed to live for about 100 hours, and you've got to keep an eye out for smoking rivets, basically. So if the wing is starting to move around, the rivets start to smoke with aluminium oxide, and it's a telltale sign the wing's moving. So we do a lot of inspections every few hours, every few flights. We keep a good eye on it, and you don't just accept smoking rivets on that wing, because it wouldn't be a good look. In fact, when they rebuilt them in the 90s, there were 6 that were built by Alain Capel Senior and Jean-Paul Salis in Romania, in the original Yak factory. And they actually put a wing skin on it from the Yak-11, which was the trainer version of this aircraft, which came after. But the Yak-11 was designed to live a long life. These were not designed to live a long life. So obviously in peacetime, the aircraft's been strengthened a bit, so it's going to last a bit longer. Well, the first thing is they're cheap. They're a factor of multiples cheaper than, say, the nearest other Western warbird. So people aren't so worried about chopping bits off them or putting bigger motors into them and modifying them for racing. But they're really quick at low level, and air racing is a low-level sport. It'll outrun a P-51 Mustang, which is what I used to fly before it. And it's much, much quicker airplane. At sea level, it's 300 knots. And they do lend themselves really well to mod. For instance, one of my mates, Ronan Harvey, who's got Steadfast, which was arena racer, that's got the R2000 engine, and it's also got the water meth injection, which cools the head, and so you can fly it with higher boost numbers. So this is 1200 horsepower, and it goes quite well on 1200, but his is 1650, so it's third as much again. And that aircraft, well, it's the world champion. I think it's 417 miles per hour at sea level. It flew at, which is what, 350 knots. It's quite an amazing airplane, but it's quite squirrely, untold. If you use all the boost, it gets quite squirrely on the runway. That's the problem with them. They're compromised airplanes. They've got a small wing, and so you've got massive runway speeds. You get airborne at 95 knots, and you stay in ground effect to 125 knots before you move away from the ground. And for landing, you're at 105 knots over the hedge. So it's actually landing at speeds of light aircraft cruise at. And it takes a lot of getting used to. It's the hardest plane I've pretty much landed, and I've flown, getting on for 300 aircraft types now, and it's a handful. It was designed to land into wind on a grass field. It wasn't designed to land on concrete with a crosswind. And so anything that's remotely crosswind or concrete has got my complete attention. But apart from that, it's fantastic. I mean, in the air, it's easily the nicest plane I've flown. And most aircraft, they heavy up when they go faster. This one doesn't. It's as easy to roll at 300 or 400 knots as it is at 200 knots. It's really fantastic ailerons on it, and I don't know why they're so good. An aerodynamicist could tell me why, because they're only tiny, like everything on it. If you look at the rudder, it's got a tiny rudder. Well, that's why it's directionally challenged on runways. It's got a small elevator. It's very compact little aeroplane, but it will run rings around anything. There was a famous pilot who's so famous I can't remember his name, and he flew all the Allied planes and the Russian planes and the German planes, and he said this was the nicest to fly.
One of the flying gems in the Cavanaugh Flight Museum is this aircraft, a Russian Yak-3. And the Yak was a series of superb Russian fighters, from the Yak-1, the Yak-3, Yak-9, and so on. It was designed to suit the combat that took place on the Eastern Front. Me-109s, FW-190s, most of the combats there took place at 15,000 feet and under. And the Russian designers knew exactly what they wanted. They wanted an aircraft that would be capable of taking on the 109s and the 190s, and the Yak could.
It was a Yak-3, and I believe it was built in 1994, around thereabouts. It was built in the factory in Russia supposedly by some of the same people who had built them during the war. The main difference being that they put an American engine in. In fact, it's got the same engine that the P-40 does on it, an Allison, to replace the original Kimlov engine that would have been in there. And they did that because those engines just weren't available. And even now, there's really none available, and those that are available, they're not very reliable. This one, like any Allison's a turnkey airplane when it comes to an Allison engine. They're great. This Yak-3, we bought it, or the museum acquired it several years ago, and had a back seat in it. The intent was to had rear dual controls in it, and the intent was to enlarge the back cockpit just a little bit to get taller people in there to where they could actually sit in it and fly in it, because otherwise, if you're much taller than me, your knees are up in your throat on this. It just wasn't meant to have two seats. And so they started doing all the work on it, and then next thing you know, air show season started, and work turned to other things, and we never really got it finished. So it's on the list to someday to go back in. You could have it flying again in a couple of weeks if you really wanted to, but we've got so many other airplanes that we do air shows with that this keeps getting pushed a little further back. But someday we would very much like to have it. It'd be fun to have a Russian airplane to add to our repertoire for air shows. They're pretty airplanes, but they're not pretty construction. The way they build things, the way the Russians put stuff together is not always the prettiest. This one's got a lot of upgrades to it, like hydraulic brakes and things like that. Originally they had air brakes. The Russians used a lot of air systems on stuff because it wouldn't freeze up and sludge up and stuff like that. But I've never flown a Yak-3, but I've flown in the Yak-9 and I've flown in the Yak-11, and they got the same wing on them. And when you sit down in the fuselage and look sideways, the wings are so short you can barely even see it. It's a wonderful little airplane. I would, I don't fly these airplanes. I'm just a mechanic, but I would love the chance to fly this.